everybody, it is Friday the 27th of October and I'm out enjoying the lovely autumnal afternoon again. Today I have come over to the east side of Abingdon. I am just outside Little Wittenham, not far from Long Wittenham, and I've come to what's known as the Wittenham Clumps. And these are they behind me. So there is one over here and one over here. And I'll just walk up as I talk to you. The Wittenham Clumps are so called because of the tree copses that are on the summit of both. These are the oldest beech trees planted in a copse anywhere in England. They were planted approximately 1724, so they are coming up now to their 300th birthday. And they are atop what's known as the Synodum Hills. There are two schools of thought as to what the Synodum Hills owe their name to. On the one hand, atop the Castle Hill, which is, I believe, the one behind me, as I'm walking up here towards Round Hill. I think that's the right way around. I may have got it the wrong way around, but I will correct that if I have. It's a long time since I've been up here. But I've forgotten where I was. No, that's right. On the top of Castle Hill, as the name would suggest, is a fort, an Iron Age fort. And it is believed to be the old fort, and old in Latin is senex, so rather than Synodum Hills, it would be Seno, and then the Don being the hill. That's one school of thought. The other school of thought is that the name is much more modern, probably 18th or early 19th century, by a classical scholar or two, who refer to them as the Synodum Hills because the sinus in Latin, although you might think it refers to this part of the face, actually refers to bosom in Latin. So the idea being that the two hills on which these clumps of trees are found resemble a lady's bosom. You can pay your money, take your choice. I don't mind which one you believe. I just have to say I have come up here on a fantastic day. So Dorchester is just a little bit further. I'll get my bearings. That's Didcot. So Dorchester's just a little bit further along, and so this is the prehistoric landscape of Dorchester. And I say prehistoric because, as I've mentioned, there is a fort, and it's reckoned to date to about 1000 BC. So that's the end of the Bronze Age and the very beginning of the Iron Age. Time Team, whom many of you may know, is a British archaeological programme that was on through the 1990s and into the 2000s, into the noughties, and they did an archaeological dig around Round Hill to see whether the fort on Castle Hill is called the Old Fort because there was a newer fort on Castle Hill. Unfortunately, because of the copse, because of the beech trees at the top of the hill, their geophysics equipment couldn't determine whether there were any remains in the ground of any banks and ditches and dwellings and the like, because the roots simply interfered. And obviously, being the oldest copse of beech trees in the country, under no circumstances were they going to be permitted to actually dig and in any way damage the trees. So they did excavations further down the side of the hill and discovered Iron Age and Bronze Age dwellings, but also Roman. So it's thought that the hills were inhabited maybe from 1000 BC through to about 300 BC, and then fall out of use for around 300 years, and then Romano-British people resettled here during the Roman period. and then the settlements moved further around. So Dorchester, by its very name, which Chester comes from castra, meaning castle or fortification, is a Roman town. And I'm sorry, I'm just enjoying the breathtaking views of Oxfordshire from these clumps, well, from the top of this hill. I'll turn the camera around and pan around, and you'll be able to see some. It's magnificent, really. So I'll just stand and let you see how far you can see from the summit of this hill. And it's a much milder day today. The wind isn't blowing nearly as much. It's cool rather than cold. There are some campfires down there. It's not the woods aren't on fire. But I'm a lot closer to these beech trees now, and you can see how beautiful they are, and their leaves are turning to that beautiful burnished copper colour that is so beloved of beech trees. There are fences up now to protect the trees from people going in, so I can't take you into the trees, but as I say, these trees are about 300 years old, so it is a beautiful location. I can stand just at the gate and maybe give you the sense of the dappled light that comes through on a beautiful afternoon like this. Oh, there is actually a gate. I can actually go in. Well, that's nice. Maybe the fences are to keep wildlife like deer away from the trees. Well, these are beautiful trees, though. It's a really beautiful location. It's very atmospheric. I always find walking between trees, with the thinning canopy of autumn above. Autumn is one of my favourite times of year. Death is in the air, in one sense. The natural world is beginning to die down for the winter. But there is such a blaze of glory, the kind of last hurrah, as the leaves turn a multiple dozen shades of colour, from purples through to oranges through to gold. It's such a magnificent feeling, really, with deciduous forests and woodlands. This is such a really, really, really pleasant place to be. It's a very calming atmosphere. Some woodlands can be very intimidating, but this has almost the feel of an enchanted wood, almost. It's got that magical, calming feeling about it. Anyway, enough of me waxing lyrical. I will just take you back outside and give you some more views of the surrounding countryside. So, we are looking now out across Berkshire, in the historical sense, Oxfordshire in the ceremonial county of today. And in the middle foreground you can see the Thames, and beyond the Thames, in the far distance, almost due north of here, is the city of Oxford. We're not necessarily getting the most exciting view of Oxford from here. Over to the northeast is Dorchester and Dorchester Abbey, which is now the parish church of Dorchester. It was once a Saxon cathedral, then was a Norman cathedral, and was a monastery of Augustinian monks. And there have been treasures found from most of the settlement ages of this part of Oxfordshire. And just beyond Dorchester, not Barchester, sorry, I was thinking of Anthony Trollope then for some reason. Just beyond Dorchester you can see Berensfield, which is a new village named after St Spurinius, who was the first bishop of Dorchester. Berens being an English diminutive of Berenius. And if we look out in the other direction, out west, you can see Didcot Power Station, and then just to the north of Didcot Power Station, but about 17 miles away, so right in the far distance, is Farringdon Folly, which is built on yet another Iron Age hill fort. The Folly was built in the late 19th century, I believe. I'll have to check that, but I believe it was the late 19th century, by a local magnate who was known to be, shall we say, eccentric. There was a famous sign in the Folly saying that anyone who commits suicide, please do not commit suicide from this tower, because doing so may cause you injury, and please do not throw stones at this notice. So yes, he was a man with an interesting sense of humour. So I will walk around the hill again and come back around the other side and see what we can see on the next clump. And as we come around the eastern side of Castle Hill, Round Hill, we can see Castle Hill just ahead of us. I think that's the right way around. I will have to double check to make sure I've got it the right way around, but I think that's Castle Hill and we're on Round Hill here. And I will walk down that way. One of the beautiful things about this part of Oxfordshire is there are a number of public footpaths, some of which will be along the path of ancient highways and byways, going back probably to the Bronze Age and possibly even earlier. And it's a lovely place for families at this time of year. We've been enjoying half term here in Oxfordshire, which means that school children have a week's holiday and their parents get to take time off work to spend with their children as well. And it's on a day like this, it's a wonderful place to come and just run around and get fresh air and be away from the noise and humdrum of everyday life. So I will go on down to the other hill now, and I will speak to you again when I get there. I'm about halfway between the two clumps at the moment, and over my shoulder you can see the power station at Didcot that I mentioned on a previous podcast. When the three towers were demolished by explosives a few years ago, only about 3 or 4 years ago, it's not that, maybe a bit longer, but certainly within the last 10 years, this was a very popular vantage point because it gave you such a wonderful view across the valley and you could see everything. I mean, it was all over very, very quickly, and there are now only 3 cooling towers left over there. But for those who actually came up here, it was a spectacular experience, I understand. I had a couple of friends who came, but I was away that weekend, so I missed the whole excitement. Otherwise, I'd have been up here too.
Firing now. All sentries, please maintain your positions.
So I'm just now arriving at Castle Hill, and I'll just turn the camera around again. I'm up here now at Castle Hill, and again this lovely clump of beech trees, again like the ones on the opposite hill, 300 years old, there or thereabouts. And this hill is slightly lower than the slightly lower than the hill opposite, and although most of the evidence of the Iron Age fort has disappeared, I think you can see from the steepness of this bank compared to the rolling slope of the other hill, and the fact that at the top of the bank there is a slight crest before it becomes part of the plateau. I think you can see the broad outlines of the hill fort as it probably was in the Bronze Age or Iron Age, whichever, so about 3,000 years ago. We'll just walk around the other side of the hill. So I've come to the very top of Castle Hill, and I've moved around more or less to the, I guess, if that's more or less south, then this is more or less east of Castle Hill. And I think you can see in the middle distance there is what looks like a tree, but is actually a group of 4 or 5 trees standing just beyond the green field that's being harvested at the moment by a tractor. And that is Brightwell Barrow. It's the third of the Synodum Hills, of which these Round Hill and Castle Hill make up the other 2, and is believed to be a Neolithic barrow, rather like Wayland's smithy. So maybe as much as 5,000 or 6,000 years old, maybe as recent as only 2,000 years old. Again, as with so many other sites in this area, a protected national monument and a site of special interest for the history, the prehistoric history, if that's not a collision of terms, if you like, the prehistoric history of this area. It's certainly part of the prehistoric landscape of this whole Dorchester area. And you can just see Dorchester Abbey is over there. And so it's in very close proximity to that centre of medieval culture and power in this area. I will be going to Dorchester Abbey, I think, tomorrow, so I won't say very much more about Dorchester. But this area was particularly significant for 1 or 2 of the principal bishops who were based at and buried at Dorchester Abbey in the Middle Ages. So if I can, I will get over to Brightwell Barrow, but it's quite isolated, as you can see, and it may not be possible for me to get there today. So back round so I can see you again and you can see me. So I hope you've enjoyed this little excursion into a further part of this local area's historic locations. I never take for granted both the wonderful scenery but also the magnificent history and the people who have created this scenery. This is not a natural environment. This is an environment that has been worked by human beings for literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. Certainly since the Neolithic, where the first enclosures and field ditches and livestock, and then later into the Bronze Age with cereal planting and the Iron Age, and then right the way through into the Roman period, where you begin to have significant industry of iron smelting and coke being produced from woodlands in this area, and all the way through into the modern day. It sometimes is, well, I find it very humbling. I have to be honest, I find it, as my YouTube ident has it, this whole area is a hand-me-down from generation upon generation of dwellers in Berkshire and Oxfordshire through the millennia, and not just through the decades. And I like that we are merely the custodians and that we have a responsibility to protect, but also, and to preserve, so we protect and preserve what we have received, but we also have to develop it ourselves and give the future some sense of who we once were, here and now. And that can't just merely be exploitation. It has to be development, and it has to be a joyous celebration of the world that we inhabit. So I think for now I will just enjoy myself in the sun a little bit longer, and then I will make my way back down, and I will speak to you all again tomorrow. So for now, goodbye. Hello again, it's me again. I keep doing this. Just as I'm about to finish, I then discover something else. There is a beautiful stone monument here, which was donated by the NatWest Bank, the National Westminster Bank, which was celebrating a poem carved onto one of the beech trees behind me 150 years before the stone was erected. And the stone was erected in 1994, so that would be 1844. And the NatWest was celebrating 150 years in the nearby town of Wallingford, which is over yonder. And as part of that, they wanted to donate the stone with a tracing of the carving on the tree and it written out. So I thought it might be nice if I actually read out the poem for you. So I'll just stop this and turn it. As up the hill with labouring steps we tread, where the twin clumps their sheltering branches spread, the summit gained at ease reclining lay, and all around the widespread scene survey. Point out each object and instructive tell the various changes that the land befell. Where the low bank the country wide surrounds, that ancient earthwork formed old Mercia's bounds. In misty distance, see the barrow heave. There lies the forgotten lonely Culcan's grave. Around this hill the ruthless Danes entrenched, and these fair plains with gory slaughter drenched. While at our feet where stands that stately tower, in days gone by uprose the Roman power. And yonder, there, where Thames' smooth waters glide, in later days appeared monastic pride. Within that field where lies the grazing herd, huge walls were found, some coffins disinterred. Such is the course of time, the wreck which fate and awful doom award the earthly great. And the poem was by Joseph Tubb of Warburg Green, written 1844 to 45. So in many ways, I think the poem has said everything that I could possibly want to say about this site, and said it very eloquently. I cannot stress how beautiful a day this is, and we are so fortunate to have had such a lovely October, which has afforded me the opportunity to share some of the beautiful treasures that we enjoy in this area. And I'm so pleased to hear from so many of you how much you have enjoyed these rambling little tours across the countryside. Obviously, Vlogtober will be coming to an end on Tuesday, Halloween. I think, though, given the enjoyment that I know that these episodes have created, I may from time to time append to the site, not necessarily as part of my weekly podcast, but perhaps around the same time, because I haven't gone anywhere near somewhere like Oxford, for example. I haven't been out to some of the other fascinating places around, like Blenheim Palace, the Duke of Marlborough's palace, where Winston Churchill was born, for example. So I think, given how appreciative so many of you have been, and how much I've enjoyed creating these episodes, and how much I've enjoyed learning about what I'm about to talk about, and putting all the bits and pieces of areas that I've known for a while into a bigger picture of British and European and world history. I will try to maintain an element of this in my weekly musings on the crafting life. I can't promise that I will ever do Vlogtober again. It has been a huge commitment, as I'm sure you all can all imagine, and I know you all appreciate. And I've learned a lot, and I've really enjoyed the process, and it's forced me to think about what I can talk about and research what I need to talk about. But it's a good discipline. It's wearing, but it's a good discipline. It has been a privilege and a pleasure making many of these episodes and hearing your responses, and I I'm really grateful to everybody who watches and everybody who comments, either privately or in the public comments. It has been and continues to be, I've not finished yet, but it has been a really positive experience for me. So I'm very grateful to you all for that. So for now, this is my final goodbye for today. I will say goodbye to you all, and I look forward to speaking to you again tomorrow. So for now, goodbye.